is Dr. Moore. Hope you guys are excited for a new semester. I wanted to really quickly this morning unpack some cell phone policy updates that will be impacting you guys this semester. You've likely heard about this. This is a state requirement. This is a model policy from the State Department of Education, which is actually mandated by South Carolina law. So, as we mentioned last semester, this is actually attached to state funding for education. These schools and districts implementing cell phone restrictions on public school campuses. So the purpose of this video is to just sort of walk you through what we've already done, what we're about to do, and how things are changing this semester and what it looks like as you're on campus at Pendleton High School. So if you recall, this is what we've already done. This is what last semester looked like. We really focused in on classroom spaces and instructional spaces and times. And you guys, by and large, did a fantastic job adjusting. And so my hope is that although this next step is going to be a transition and it'll come with some challenges, my hope is that you'll rise to the occasion like you did last semester. But if you recall, we require students to put their cell phones in zipper pouches. They were not to be accessed at any point during instructional time. And for those of you that unfortunately had experience with cell phone violations, we do escalate the discipline very quickly because it's very important to us to protect instructional time and instructional space. So that's what our discipline progression looked like. That's not changing for classroom spaces. There's a couple of minor tweaks we're doing with the pouches, but I'll get into that here in just a second. Because we are in a new semester, those violation tallies are going to reset. So if you were up to violation 3 or 4 or 5 last semester, the good news is that has reset. However, as I hinted to you guys last semester, we suspected that when the state finally adopted the model policy, that it would be more restrictive than what we were currently doing. And that has proven to be the case. So whereas we were prepared on our own to fight the cell phone battle in classrooms, the state is now making us fight that battle in common areas, hallways, cafeteria, etc. And they are extremely specific about what they mean by the school day, by accessing devices. In fact, they give us definitions within the state model policy, which again carries the weight of law. So I'm going to read A to you real quick. This is from the state. During the school day, students are prohibited from accessing their personal electronic devices unless authorized for classroom use. I'll go ahead and tell you there is no authorized classroom use at Pendleton High School. Students may not wear or access device accessories during the school day. Students must store their devices and device accessories in lockers, backpacks, or otherwise as directed by the school district during the school day. So there are no allowances for common areas, hallways, lunch, etc. It's just the entire instructional day. And then if you direct your attention to D, if a student violates the preceding rules during the school day, the student will be subject to progressive consequences in the Student Code of Conduct and disciplinary enforcement procedures. And what that means is that we have to discipline for it. We can't just say this is a rule, but we're not going to punish for it. The state literally expects us to issue discipline when students are not in compliance with this. I'm not going to read every single one of these to you at this time. However, it just should be illustrative to you that the state is extremely specific about what they mean in this law and in this policy. They define what they mean by a personal electronic device, by an accessory, by the school day, what they mean by access, and it is extremely rigid. And we're going to unpack a couple of these here in just a second. So this includes, but it's not limited to, cell phones, smartwatches, tablets, gaming devices. So your cell phone, obviously, but yes, your smartwatch. You can't bring your own tablet to try to get around the policy. If you've got a Nintendo Switch or whatever your gaming device of choice is, those are included. AirPods that can connect wirelessly to your phone, those are also included. We are going to make an allowance for wired headphones only because we can see whether or not the wired headphones are attached to your Chromebook instead of your cell phone. But again, the state model policy is extremely specific. It is extremely restrictive. None of these things should be on campus or be accessed. School day is defined as the period of time that a student is present on the school campus from their arrival, and then they say in parentheses the tardy bell, until afternoon dismissal at the end of the day. So how we're going to interpret that is the first period tardy bell. That's when instructional time technically begins. That's when we're going to start enforcing the common area cell phone ban. So in the cafeteria and the gym before school, we're not going to enforce it. So that's the opportunity for you to send off your final text, play games, watch videos, email, whatever you need to do on your device. That's your opportunity to do so. But by 8:30, your cell phones have to be powered off and they've got to be put in the pouch. There is no exception made at lunch. Quite frankly, had the state allowed such an exception, we might have taken advantage of it, but there is no exception because lunch does fall squarely within the instructional day. So we have to enforce this at lunch. It would be my advice that if you have the ability to leave your cell phone in a book bag locked in a classroom at lunch, I would do so. Otherwise, you are sort of risking the temptation of accessing it at lunch and getting a violation. We're going to interpret the end of the school day as 3:30. So at 3:30, when the dismissal bell rings, you can get your phones out. We're not going to, bother students as they're walking to the bus ramp or walking outside out front to get picked up or to the student parking lot. Once that bell rings at 3:30, or we're going to let you go on your devices. Access is defined as viewing, holding, wearing, or otherwise using a device for the purposes of communication, internet access, etc., etc. I mean, holding, wearing, otherwise using. If, in the eyes of the state of South Carolina, if you look too hard at your device, you're accessing it, which is why the state tells us that those devices should be powered off, not silenced, not notifications turned off. They want them powered down and sort of out of sight, out of mind. And so we're going to be in compliance with the state. So, get on your phone when you get here. But by 8:30, those devices need to be powered off. Authorized for classroom use. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but this is not the loophole that some people think it is. First off, authorized for classroom use has a really specific definition in the eyes of the state. It's got to be a use that is aligned with state content standards and educational objectives. So, for instance, I need my phone to listen to music while I work is not aligned with a state content standard. So that doesn't fly. And even if it were, it would have to get approval all the way up at the superintendent level, which is just going to be frank with you, is not going to happen because we're a one-to-one district. Most of the things you can do on a cell phone, you can do on a Chromebook. What this looks like here at PHS, those zipper pouches, which last semester were sort of anchored to each classroom, to each student desk, you're going to get one in your first period, your first class of the day, and that pouch that you receive is now yours. It is going to be attached to you instead of the classroom. It is going to follow you all throughout the day. You're going to take it home. You need to bring it to school every day. And that's going to help us avoid you constantly having to take your phone in and out of pouches throughout the day. So once you put your phone in that pouch and zip it up at 8:30 in the morning, it's going to stay in there until 3:30 or whenever you leave campus. And again, you need to make sure your device is powered off. That is what the state wants. We are going to ask that pouches be hung from desks. The purpose of that is, one, to make sure that we have a way to visually inspect for compliance. We can walk around and see how many pouches are being hung from the desks, how many phones are in the pouches, allows us to ask a student, where is your cell phone if it's not in the pouch? So that is the expectation. A lot of questions about, what do I do if I need to contact my parents or my parents need to contact me? The reality is that we're going to have to go back to using landline phones. So if you really need to call a parent, your parent really needs to call you. We're going to have to go through the front office. So if you've got a transportation issue, you can ask your teacher, can I go to the front office? You can do a smart pass to the front office, use the front office phone. If it's going to be a short call that doesn't require privacy and it'll be quick, then the teacher has the discretion to allow you to use their classroom phone. But if you'll recall, last semester we had a process in place where a student could request to use their cell phone with administrative permission, and that is now done because the state policy requires that the devices are powered down and stored for the entire instructional day. There are no allowances made for, quote unquote, emergencies. We do want to encourage you guys to use email to communicate with students if it is absolute, or with your parents and your parents communicating with students if it's necessary during the school day. So here's our approach at Pendleton. One, we need to be in compliance with the state policy. We're not going to buck against what the state wants. We, as a district, receive millions of dollars from the state in educational funding, and we're just not going to risk that. So we're going to be in compliance. We have to issue consequences. That's in the model policy. There is no verbiage, though, in the proviso, which is the law, or the state model policy that says that we have to treat common area hallway offenses the exact same as classroom offenses. And so at Pendleton High School, what we want to do is differentiate between those two spaces. So on this slide, you're going to see on the left how we have dealt with classroom violations. That is not changing. You see the progression. That's the same as it was last semester. Everybody's starting fresh. It's a new semester. On the right, you're going to see how we're going to deal with common area or hallway violations. So once that tardy bell rings at 8:30, we now start enforcing the common area cell phone ban. But the way it's going to work is on a demerit system. So violations 1 through 4, they're just verbal warnings. The teacher says, John Smith, your cell phone's out. That's a cell phone violation. Put your cell phone up. And that's it. For violations 1 through 4, that's all that's going to happen. Our teachers have a Google form we have provided to them that they are going to use to document the violation to report it to us. You're not going to get a long form referral or a short form referral. There's not going to be a phone call home. Your consequence and your notice is just that verbal warning. We're going to issue consequences every 5th violation, and it's going to be progressive. So violation number 5, you get a 1-hour after school detention. You'll be called down. When you're called down for that referral, you'll be shown the dates of your other violations. Violation number 10 is a 2.5-hour after school detention. Violation number 15 is a day of ISS, and we're capping the consequence for common area violations at 1 day of in-school suspension. And as you can see, all the violations in between every 5th violation, these are just verbal warnings. So we feel like this is fair. The battle that we really want to fight is in the classroom. We will continue to be strict in the classroom, and we will continue to escalate that discipline because we really think it's important to protect instructional time and space. We're trying to be realistic and reasonable within the common areas in the hallways. Obviously, we expect you to be in compliance. We expect you to be respectful when a compliance issue is addressed by a faculty member, but we also are not interested in having students live in ISS because a cell phone was out at lunch, for instance. There are some trade-offs here. This is a relatively lenient approach. I'll go ahead and tell you that most of the districts around us have a far, far more rigid and punitive approach to this policy than we do. There's a district around us where by the time you get your 6th cell phone violation, you've been suspended out of school for 14 days. And we have no interest in doing that. However, in order for us to be more lenient, there's got to be some give and take. So first off, when a teacher addresses you and they tell you you're in violation, and our teachers have been told more or less exactly how to address a cell phone violation in common areas. They're going to say your name. They're going to say that's a cell phone violation. Please put up your cell phone. You've got to comply. All right, we're trying to be lenient. Let's not get into a back and forth. Let's not get into an attitude problem. Let's not be disrespectful. If we're going to be lenient, then we need you to sort of play the game with us as well. All right. You need to assume that if you have been called down for a violation, then the teacher has reported it. You're not going to be notified in paper or via email or any other way for every single violation. We've got 950 students. There will be a significant number of hallway violations. There is no reasonable way to call students down to tell them you got violation number 3 or violation number 14. That would be literally all our front office staff does and administrative staff does. And so we don't want to waste time. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want to call you guys repeatedly out of class. So you're going to need to assume that if a cell phone has been addressed by a teacher in the common areas, that has been reported. And because of the number of gimmies that we're allowing, you're only going to be formally notified of your violations when you reach that point of receiving discipline. So when you get violation number 5, that's when you'll be shown your other dates of violations. And that's what allows us to be more flexible. Teachers are not going to report students on the Google form that they haven't directly addressed. So a teacher's not going to see a student on their cell phone in the hallway, but they didn't have an opportunity to, call them out for it and just sort of secretly, report it. They've got to address it. When you get called down for a disciplinary meeting or conference due to a common area cell phone violation, this is sort of what it will look like. So you'll be given the dates of your infractions, where they happened, and also who reported it. And that's just to sort of jog your memory about like, oh yeah, I remember that day when Dr. Moore told me in the cafeteria at lunch, hey, that's a cell phone violation. And again, we escalate from 1 hour to 2.5 hour after school detention. And by violation number 15, you're at 1 day of in-school suspension. So I just want to really challenge you guys to continue to be flexible. There's going to be a transition. Just so you know, this first week, we are going to call you down for common area cell phone violations, but we are not going to report them until next week. So this week is all about training, getting acclimated to these new expectations, but we're not going to be reporting them yet. But it would behoove you to start practicing compliance with this new policy because it goes live on Monday. All right. That's all I've got, guys. I hope you guys are excited for this semester. If you've got any kind of questions, please feel free to ask me or another administrator. There will obviously be things that we need to iron out as we get through the working details of this new policy. And I just ask everybody to exercise some grace and some patience. We'll get through this. It'll be fine. And my hope is that we're able to have a good semester that is hopefully very free of distractions. Thank you, guys. Go Bulldogs.